Before we dive into today's story, I want you to know something. This isn't just entertainment. This is about recognizing the wolves in designer clothing, the people who see your kindness as weakness and your generosity as opportunity. If you've ever felt like someone was playing games with your heart or your family's legacy, this story will hit close to home. And if you've ever been underestimated because of your age, your gender, or your willingness to trust, well, you're about to see what happens when someone makes that mistake with the wrong woman. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and prepare yourself for a story of calculated justice that will leave you questioning everyone's motives. This is Victoria's story, and trust me, you'll never see the ending coming. But first, if you're new here, welcome to Her True Stories, where we celebrate women who refuse to be victims. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because these are the stories mainstream media won't tell you. Now, let's begin. My name is Victoria Bartlett, and at 59, I thought I understood grief. I was wrong. Standing beside my son Marcus's casket, watching the rain streak down the funeral home's windows like tears I couldn't shed, I felt something darker than sorrow settling into my bones. The black Chanel dress I wore, the one Marcus had bought me for my birthday 3 years ago, felt like armor now. My long gray hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon, my grandmother's pearl necklace catching the dim light as mourners filed past, offering hollow condolences. "He was so young," they whispered. "Such a tragedy." "You must be devastated, Victoria." I nodded gracefully, accepting their sympathy with the poise that had served me well through 35 years of marriage to Marcus's father, through widowhood, through building our family's construction empire into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. But my attention wasn't on their words. It was on her. It had been a week since the accident, a week of funeral arrangements, legal consultations, and managing the devastating reality of losing my only child. The service itself was exactly what Marcus would have wanted: elegant, meaningful, focused on his contributions to the community rather than empty platitudes.
Chloe,
My daughter-in-law of barely 2 years. She stood across the room, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the supposed devastation. 28 years old, beautiful in that artificial way money could buy, and already sizing up the room like a predator evaluating its territory. "Victoria," she approached me after the service, her voice dripping with false concern. "I know this isn't the time, but we need to discuss Marcus's affairs. The lawyers said there might be complications with the estate." I studied her face, the perfectly contoured cheekbones, the lips that had probably cost more than most people's cars. Complications? Well, you know how Marcus was about paperwork. So disorganized. She leaned closer, her perfume cloying. "I'm just worried about securing our future. His future investments, the company shares, the properties. I assume everything passes to me as his wife." The audacity stole my breath. Marcus had been dead for exactly 4 days, and here she was, circling like a vulture. "Chloe, perhaps we should discuss this later." Of course," she said quickly, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. "I just want to make sure I understand what Marcus left us. The house alone must be worth, what, 12 million? And his share of Bartlett Construction." I let her words hang in the air, watching as she revealed herself completely. She had no idea. Marcus had been many things: passionate, driven, sometimes reckless, but he wasn't stupid. And he certainly hadn't been careless with legal matters. Every asset she was salivating over: the $12 million mansion overlooking the Pacific, his position as executive vice president of Bartlett Construction with its substantial salary and bonuses, the investment portfolio worth another $8 million. All the real wealth remained in my name. Marcus had been a highly compensated executive and had accumulated significant savings, but the family assets had always remained with me. He'd understood that family wealth required careful management across generations, not hasty transfers for tax convenience. Chloe had no claim to any of it. We'll sort everything out, I told her, my voice steady. These things take time. She smiled, the kind of smile a snake might wear before striking. I know you'll do the right thing, Victoria. Marcus would want his wife to be taken care of. As she walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of having an advantage my opponent didn't know about. Chloe thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was about to discover how wrong she was. That night, alone in my study, I poured myself a glass of the 1982 Bordeaux Marcus had been saving for a special occasion and opened his will. Everything was exactly as I remembered. A few personal items to Chloe, a modest life insurance policy, and a letter expressing his love for her. But the real wealth, the family legacy, remained mine to control. I sipped my wine and began to plan. If you've ever been told you're too old to start over, let me tell you, that's a lie. Your story isn't over, and you still have chapters left to write. Our best-selling book, Reclaiming Your Peace After Pain, is filled with simple, powerful steps to help you heal, rebuild, and fall in love with life again. Click the link in the description box and start your new beginning today. And if this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of women who refuse to be underestimated. 3 days after the funeral, Chloe showed up at my door unannounced. The timing was calculated. I'd expected this visit since overhearing her phone calls during the wake, when she'd spoken to someone about securing her position and understanding her rights. I watched her through the security cameras as she stood on my front steps, shifting her weight from one designer heel to the other. She'd traded her funeral black for a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Inappropriate for mourning, perfect for what she really was, a gold digger who thought she'd struck the mother lode. "Victoria," she said when I opened the door, her voice honey-sweet but strained. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by. I've been going crazy in that little apartment, thinking about Marcus." The little apartment. She meant the downtown loft Marcus had rented for them, a charming space worth maybe $500,000, though I suspected Chloe saw it as barely better than a prison cell now that she thought bigger prizes awaited. "Of course, dear.
Come in."
I led her through the foyer, past the Monet that had hung there since Marcus was a boy, into the sitting room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Everything around us screamed wealth. The custom Italian furniture, the Persian rugs, the crystal decanters filled with liquor worth more than most cars. I could see her eyes cataloging every piece. "It's so quiet here," she said, settling into Marcus's favorite chair without invitation. "This house is enormous. You must get lonely." "I have my routines," I replied, taking my usual seat across from her. "Yeah. Actually, I was hoping we could discuss Marcus's estate. I met with a lawyer yesterday, and he said there might be some confusion about the inheritance."
Here it was.
The real reason for her visit. What kind of confusion? She leaned forward, her expression shifting to something she probably thought looked concerned. "Well, he couldn't find records of Marcus owning this house, or his shares in the company. The lawyer said it's all still in your name?" I sipped my tea, letting the silence stretch. "Yes, that's correct. But that can't be right. Marcus was your partner in the business. This was his childhood home. Surely, he owned half of everything." "Marcus was my son, Chloe. But he was also the executive vice president of Bartlett Construction, not the owner. His compensation was excellent, but the company itself has remained in my control since I founded it 40 years ago. As for the house," I gestured around us. "This has been in the Bartlett family for 3 generations. Marcus lived here as my son, not as a property owner." The color drained from her perfectly made-up face. "But the lawyer said, I mean, as his wife, Don't I have any claim? To what exactly? The estate, the money, the life we built together. Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I almost believe her distress was genuine. Chloe, Marcus left you everything that was his to leave. There's the life insurance policy, $50,000. His personal savings account.
His car.
The furniture in your apartment. 50,000? She stared at me as if I'd slapped her. That's it. That's quite generous for a 2-year marriage. The mask slipped completely then. Her eyes hardened, and I saw the real Chloe, the one who had calculated Marcus's worth down to the dollar before accepting his proposal. This isn't right, she said, standing abruptly. Marcus promised me we'd have a future together. A real future. He wouldn't have married me just to leave me with nothing. Perhaps you should have discussed finances more thoroughly before the wedding. She spun around, her composure fracturing. You can't do this. I won't let you do this. Marcus loved me. Marcus loved many things. I interrupted, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Fast cars, expensive wine, beautiful women. That doesn't mean he was foolish enough to sign away his family's legacy. Chloe stared at me for a long moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. She was recalculating, reassessing, looking for another angle of attack. You're right, she said finally, her voice softer now.
I'm sorry. I'm scared, Victoria.
I don't know how I'm going to manage without him. The apartment rent alone is $3,000 a month, and I don't have a job. You could get one. I've never worked. Marcus insisted I didn't need to. He said he'd take care of everything. She dabbed at her eyes, though I noticed no actual tears fell. I just thought, as his mother, you'd want to help me. For his sake. There it was, the pivot to manipulation. She'd tried greed, then anger. Now she was attempting to play on my maternal instincts. What exactly are you asking for, Chloe? Maybe I could stay here for a while, just until I figure things out? This house is so big, and I hate being alone in that apartment with all of Marcus's things. I considered her request, though not for the reasons she imagined. Having her close would make things easier. That's actually not a terrible idea, I said slowly. The guest wing has been empty for years. You could have some space to grieve properly. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? Oh, Victoria, thank you. I promise I won't be any trouble. I'm sure you won't, I replied, already thinking ahead to the opportunities this arrangement would provide. As I showed her to the guest wing, pointing out the amenities and explaining the house rules, I watched her eyes catalog every expensive detail. She thought she was moving into paradise, positioning herself for a longer game. Poor little Chloe had no idea she was walking into her own beautifully appointed trap. 2 weeks into our arrangement, I had learned everything I needed to know about my son's widow. Chloe slept until noon, spent her afternoons by the pool scrolling through her phone, and her evenings raiding my wine cellar while video calling friends about her complicated grief process. She ordered expensive takeout on Marcus's credit cards, which wouldn't be canceled for another month, bought designer clothes online, and treated my staff like personal servants. Most tellingly, she spent hours each day wandering through the house, photographing rooms with her phone, and researching the value of my art collection on auction websites.
Victoria?
She called from the library one afternoon as I was reviewing construction contracts. Could I talk to you for a minute? I looked up to find her hovering in the doorway, wearing a silk robe that cost more than most people's monthly salary and clutching a stack of papers. What can I do for you, dear? She settled into the chair across from my desk, spreading out what looked like real estate listings. I've been thinking about my situation, and I was wondering, I was hoping you might consider making me a small loan. What kind of loan? Nothing major. Maybe 200,000 or 300,000. Just to get me started. I could buy a little place, maybe start a business. She slid the papers toward me. I found some lovely condos downtown. Nothing too expensive. I glanced at the listings. The lovely condos started at 1.2 million. That's quite ambitious for someone with no income. But I'd pay you back, of course. With interest. And I was thinking... She leaned forward, her eyes bright with a plan she'd clearly rehearsed. Maybe I could work for the company? Marcus always said I had a good head for business. Marcus had never said any such thing. In fact, during one of our last conversations, he'd mentioned how Chloe seemed to think money appeared magically, without understanding the work required to earn it. What kind of position did you have in mind? Well, I was thinking something in management. Maybe overseeing the residential projects? I have such good taste in design, and I understand what wealthy clients want. She understood what wealthy clients owned, perhaps. But managing multi-million-dollar construction projects required skills Chloe had never developed, skills like showing up to work before noon, for instance. That's an interesting idea, I said carefully. But those positions require extensive experience. I'm a quick learner. And honestly, Victoria, I think Marcus would want you to give me a chance. He believed in me. There it was again, invoking my dead son to manipulate me. The strategy might have worked on someone who hadn't spent the last 2 weeks watching Chloe treat Marcus's death like a business opportunity. Tell me, Chloe, what exactly did Marcus believe about you? She blinked, apparently not expecting the question. What do you mean? You said he believed in you. What did he think you were capable of? He thought I was smart and beautiful. He said I could do anything I set my mind to. Generic praise. The kind of things people said to pretty young wives to keep them happy. Nothing specific about her talents or abilities or dreams. And what have you set your mind to? Another pause. I want to honor his memory. Build something meaningful with the life he gave me. By borrowing money to buy luxury condos and giving yourself a management position you're not qualified for? Her cheeks flushed. I'm trying to be independent. I thought you'd respect that. I respect independence earned through effort, not inherited through marriage. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Chloe gathered up her real estate listings, her movements sharp with suppressed anger. I see, she said coldly. So you're not going to help me. I didn't say that. She paused, halfway to standing.
What?
I set down my pen and really looked at her. This beautiful, entitled young woman who thought she could waltz into my family's legacy and claim it as her own. I think you need to understand what real work looks like before you can honor Marcus's memory. What did he do every morning at 5 a.m.? He went running?
He went to job sites.
Talked to foremen, reviewed progress, solved problems. He understood every aspect of our business because he started at the bottom and worked his way up. If you want to follow in his footsteps, you should do the same. You want me to work construction? She looked horrified. I want you to understand what built this family's wealth. Manual labor, long hours, difficult decisions. Marcus spent 2 summers working alongside our crews when he was in college. He knew what it meant to earn a day's pay. Chloe stared at me as if I'd suggested she join a convent. Of course, if that doesn't appeal to you, you're welcome to continue as you are. Living here as my guest, taking time to process your grief. For how long? As long as it takes. She didn't ask as long as it takes for what, because we both knew the answer. As long as it takes for me to decide what to do with you. That evening, I watched from my bedroom window as Chloe paced the gardens, her phone pressed to her ear. Even from 4 stories up, I could see her agitation in the sharp gestures she made as she talked. She was calling someone for advice, trying to figure out her next move.
Good.
Let her strategize. Let her plot and plan and calculate. She had no idea that every conversation, every scheme, every desperate attempt to secure her future was just giving me more information to work with. The guest wing had been equipped with a comprehensive security system when Marcus was a teenager, not because I was spying on him, but because the wing had been broken into twice during those years. The system had been updated regularly for insurance purposes, and monitoring it was simply part of my standard security protocols for the property. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled in to listen to exactly what Chloe thought of her loving mother-in-law. "She's playing games with me, Derek. I can feel it." Chloe's voice came through the audio system crystal clear as she spoke to whoever Derek was, a friend, a confidant, possibly a lawyer she was consulting on the side. I sat in my private study, the one room Chloe had never seen, sipping herbal tea while listening to my daughter-in-law reveal her true nature. "No, I don't think she suspects anything. She's just a lonely old woman who thinks she can control me with money." "What do you mean, how old?" "She's 59, but she acts like she's from the Victorian era with all her rules and expectations." 59. A lonely old woman. I smiled into my teacup. "The thing is, Derek, I know there's more money than she's letting on. The art collection alone is worth millions. And she owns this massive construction company. I looked it up. They built half the luxury developments in the city." "No, I can't just ask directly. I have to be smart about this." Smart. That was rich. "Listen, I've been thinking. What if I made myself indispensable? Like, what if she gets attached to having me around? Old people get lonely, right? Maybe I can work that angle while I figure out the legal options." The legal options. She'd clearly been consulting with attorneys, learning just enough to be dangerous. "The problem is she wants me to get a job. Can you believe that? Me, working some entry-level construction job like a common labor. I know, but Derek, I didn't marry Marcus to end up poor. The plan was supposed to be simple. Marry rich, live rich, inherit rich. Now his mother is trying to turn me into some kind of working-class hero." The plan. So she'd admitted it. Her marriage to Marcus had been calculated from the beginning. Maybe I could fake it for a while. Pretend I'm interested in learning the business while I gather information about her assets. Yes, exactly. Get close to her, earn her trust, then figure out how to get what should be mine. What should be hers. After a 2-year marriage to a man she'd married for his money. Derek, I'm not giving up. This woman has $12 million in real estate and God knows how much more in investments and business assets. I'm not walking away from that because she wants to play hard to get. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Derek apparently encouraging increasingly desperate schemes. Chloe discussed everything from contesting Marcus's will to finding ways to make me emotionally dependent on her presence. When she finally hung up and I heard her footsteps in the guest wing, I sat back in my chair and contemplated my options. The smart thing would be to simply evict her. Change the locks, hire security, let her struggle with her $50,000 inheritance and minimum wage job prospects. But where was the satisfaction in that? Chloe had married my son for money, treated his death as a business setback, and was now plotting to manipulate a lonely old woman out of her life's work. She deserved something more creative than simple poverty. The next morning, I knocked on her door at 7 a.m. She opened it wearing silk pajamas, her hair mussed from sleep. "Is everything okay? I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, about you learning the business." Her eyes sharpened immediately. "And I'd like to offer you a position. Nothing glamorous at first. You'll need to work your way up like Marcus did. But it would give you income and purpose." "What kind of position?" "Administrative assistant in our main office. You'd handle scheduling, basic paperwork, client communications. $25 an hour to start." I could see her mental calculations. $25 an hour, 40 hours a week, maybe 50 weeks a year. 50,000 annually. Exactly what Marcus had left her in life insurance. "That's generous," she said carefully. "It's what we pay entry-level administrative staff. No special treatment, Because you're family. Of course not. I wouldn't want special treatment. Liar. Good. You'll start Monday. Office hours are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Dress code is business professional. Think conservative, not fashionable. 7 a.m.? She looked like I'd suggested she start at midnight. Construction is an early business, Chloe. Our crews start at dawn. Our subcontractors expect calls before 8. Our clients appreciate responsiveness. If you want to understand how Marcus built his career, you need to understand the rhythm of the industry.
Right.
Of course. 7 a.m. I'll have my driver pick you up at 6:30 Monday morning. We'll ride together so I can introduce you to the staff. That afternoon, I called my office manager, Patricia, who had been with the company for 15 years. Mrs. Bartlett? Is everything all right? Patricia, I need you to prepare a workstation for a new administrative assistant. She'll be starting Monday. Certainly. What's her background? Limited. She'll need close supervision and extensive training. I want you to give her every possible opportunity to succeed, but document everything. Every task assigned, every deadline missed, every interaction with clients. Is this someone you're concerned about? Patricia had excellent instincts. Let's say I want a complete record of her performance. For future reference. Understood. Anything else I should know? She's Marcus's widow. She'll be living in my guest house temporarily while she adjusts to her new circumstances. A pause. Patricia had met Chloe briefly at the funeral and had later remarked to me that she'd never seen a woman so focused on networking at her own husband's memorial service. I'll take good care of her, Mrs. Bartlett. I know you will. That evening, I prepared a special dinner. Marcus's favorite meal of herb-crusted salmon and roasted vegetables. I'd planned to share memories of him with Chloe, to see if she had any genuine feelings about her late husband beneath all the scheming. This is delicious, she said, though I noticed she'd barely touched the salmon. Did you cook this yourself? Marcus taught me this recipe. He learned it during a summer he spent in Alaska, working on a fishing boat. Alaska? She looked surprised. He never mentioned Alaska. It was before you met. He wanted to understand different kinds of work, different kinds of people. He spent that whole summer learning from fishermen and dock workers. Huh. She pushed food around her plate. He told me he'd always worked in construction. Marcus believed that every kind of work had dignity. He never thought he was too good for any honest job. Something in my tone must have warned her, because she looked up sharply. Are you saying I think I'm too good to work? Are you? Of course not. I'm looking forward to starting Monday. It'll be good to have purpose again. Purpose. As if her purpose hadn't been calculating how to separate me from my assets. I'm glad to hear that, because the work won't be easy. Patricia runs a tight ship, and our clients expect excellence. I won't disappoint you. We finished dinner in relative silence, and afterward, Chloe excused herself to prepare for the week ahead. I watched her walk toward the guest wing, her posture perfect, her movements graceful. She really was beautiful. I could understand why Marcus had been attracted to her, at least initially. But beauty without character was like a lovely building with no foundation, impressive from a distance, dangerous up close. Monday would be educational for both of us. Chloe lasted exactly 4 hours on her first day of work. I watched through the glass walls of my corner office as she struggled with basic computer programs, stumbled through filing systems, and managed to disconnect 2 important client calls before lunch. Patricia, bless her patient heart, maintained professional composure while demonstrating the same simple tasks multiple times. Mrs. Bartlett? Patricia appeared in my doorway at noon. Chloe asked if she could take an extended lunch break. She said she felt overwhelmed and needed time to decompress. How extended? She mentioned maybe doing some shopping to clear her head. I told her lunch was normally 30 minutes, but she seemed quite distressed. I glanced through the glass wall to see Chloe at her desk, staring at her computer screen with the expression of someone who discovered hieroglyphics. Let her go. But make sure she understands that extended lunch breaks aren't normally accommodated. Of course. At 3 p.m., Chloe returned with several shopping bags and a demeanor that suggested her decompression had involved retail therapy rather than problem-solving. How are things going? I asked, stopping by her workstation. Great. Really great. Patricia has been so helpful. She gestured vaguely at her computer, where I could see she'd managed to open an email program but apparently hadn't figured out how to respond to any messages. I see you've been working on correspondence. Yes. Well, I'm being very careful to craft thoughtful responses. I don't want to rush and make mistakes. Thoughtful responses. She'd been staring at the same email for 2 hours. Perhaps Patricia could review your drafts before you send them? Just until you get comfortable with our communication style. That's a wonderful idea. I want to represent the company properly. That evening, during our usual dinner together, I decided to probe a bit deeper into Chloe's relationship with my son. Tell me about your favorite memory with Marcus, I said over our wine. She paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. My favorite memory? Something special you shared. A moment that really captured who he was. Oh, there were so many. She set down her fork, clearly buying time to think.
He was such a romantic.
Always surprising me with gifts and trips. What kind of trips? Well, there was that weekend in Napa. And the time he took me to New York for shopping. Oh, and that cruise to Mexico for our honeymoon. All expensive vacations, all focused on luxury and entertainment. Nothing about hiking the trails Marcus loved, or visiting the museums where he'd spend hours studying architecture, or the quiet evenings when he'd read poetry aloud because it reminded him of his father. Did he ever tell you about his plan to restore the old Hartley Mansion downtown? The what? It's a historic property that's been abandoned for 20 years. Marcus had this dream of turning it into affordable housing for working families. He'd been saving money and researching historical renovation techniques. Chloe looked completely blank. He never mentioned that.
He was passionate about it.
Said it would be a way to honor his father's memory while creating something meaningful for the community. That's nice, she said uncertainly. I studied her face, searching for any flicker of recognition or genuine emotion. Nothing. He left detailed plans in his study. Sketches, financial projections, even preliminary contractor bids. I thought you might want to see them.
Oh, yes.
Of course. That would be lovely. But I could see in her eyes that she was only agreeing to be polite. The idea of Marcus having dreams beyond providing her with luxury held no interest for her. After dinner, I led her to Marcus's study, a room I'd left exactly as he'd kept it, with blueprints pinned to walls and architectural books stacked on every surface. This is where he spent most of his free time, I said, watching her face as she took in the controlled chaos of his creative space. Chloe walked slowly around the room, her expression carefully neutral. She paused at his desk, where a half-finished sketch of the Hartley Mansion renovation still lay open. He was very thorough, she said finally. He inherited that from his father. James could spend months perfecting a single design element.
Right.
James. She touched the edge of the sketch with one finger, but her attention was already drifting toward the window. Did Marcus ever bring you here? Show you what he was working on? Sometimes. But you know how it is, husbands and their hobbies. I tried to be supportive, but I didn't want to interfere with his creative process. His creative process. She made it sound like a weekend pottery class instead of the passionate calling that had driven every major decision in his adult life. Chloe, can I ask you something personal? Of course. What made you fall in love with Marcus? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She turned from the window, her perfect composure faltering for just a moment. What do you mean? I mean, what was it about him specifically? What drew you to him over any other man you might have met? He was handsome, successful. He made me laugh. Generic attributes. The kind of things anyone might list about an attractive, wealthy man. What made him laugh? I'm sorry. You said he made you laugh. I'm curious what you found funny about each other. Another pause. He had a great sense of humor. Very witty. Can you think of a specific example? She stared at me, and I saw the moment she realized she was failing some kind of test she hadn't known she was taking. Victoria, I'm not sure what you're getting at. I'm not getting at anything. I'm simply trying to understand the relationship between my son and his wife. Is that unreasonable? No, of course not. It's just, grief makes everything feel complicated. Sometimes I can't separate my memories from my pain. A clever deflection. She was turning her inability to recall genuine intimacy with Marcus into a symptom of mourning. I understand completely, I said softly. Grief does strange things to memory. We stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by the evidence of Marcus's inner life, a life she'd apparently never bothered to explore. I should let you get some rest, she said finally. Tomorrow's another big day at the office.
Yes.
How are you finding the work? Challenging but rewarding. Patricia is an excellent teacher. She mentioned you seemed a bit overwhelmed. Just adjustment nerves. I'm sure I'll find my rhythm soon. I'm sure you will. But as I watched her leave Marcus's study without a backward glance at his life's work, I was sure of something else entirely. Chloe had never known my son at all. She'd married a bank account and a lifestyle, not a human being with dreams and passions and fears. And that realization opened up possibilities I hadn't considered before. By the end of her second week at Bartlett Construction, Chloe had managed to lose 3 client files, schedule 2 meetings for the same time slot, and somehow order 500 pounds of concrete to be delivered to my personal residence instead of an active job site. She's trying, Patricia assured me during our weekly review meeting. But Mrs. Bartlett, I have to ask, is there some reason you specifically wanted her in this position? Patricia was diplomatic, but I could hear the frustration beneath her professional courtesy. Having Chloe as an administrative assistant was like using a Rolls-Royce as a lawnmower, technically possible, but wasteful and ultimately destructive. I believe people deserve opportunities to prove themselves, I said carefully. Of course. It's just, well, perhaps she might be better suited to a different type of role? Something that plays more to her strengths. What strengths would those be, in your observation? Patricia considered this diplomatically. She's very decorative, and she seems to have strong opinions about interior design. Maybe something in our staging department for the luxury properties. Let's give her another week in administration. Everyone deserves a fair chance to learn. That afternoon, I invited Chloe for lunch at the city's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place where Marcus used to take me for special occasions, where the wine list started at $300 a bottle and the waiting list for reservations was typically 6 months long. This is incredible, Chloe said, settling into the plush banquet seating and immediately photographing her place setting. How did you get reservations here? I've been coming here for 20 years. They keep a table for regular clients. She spent the first 10 minutes of our meal posting photos to social media, documenting every course as if she were a food critic instead of someone struggling to master basic filing systems. Chloe, I wanted to talk about your progress at the office. Her phone disappeared immediately. Oh, yes. I think I'm really getting the hang of things. Patricia mentioned there have been some small challenges. Growing pains, she said quickly. You know how it is when you're learning a completely new industry. But I'm committed to improving. I'm glad to hear that. Because I've been thinking about your future with the company. Her eyes lit up with interest. My future? Well, You can't stay in an entry-level position forever. If you're serious about building a career with us, we should discuss advancement opportunities. I'm very serious. I ordered the wine, a particularly fine Chablis that cost more than most people's weekly salary, and began laying out what appeared to be a mentorship plan. The thing is, Chloe, success in construction requires understanding every aspect of the business. Not just the administrative side, but the actual work, the craftsmanship, the attention to detail that separates excellent companies from adequate ones. Absolutely. I want to learn everything. That's why I think you should spend some time on actual job sites. See how projects come together from the ground up. Her enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Job sites. Construction sites. Where the real work happens. You can't manage what you don't understand.
Right.
Of course. But wouldn't wouldn't I be in the way? I don't want to disrupt the workers. Not if you're there to learn. I'm thinking you could shadow our site supervisors, observe the workflow, maybe even help with quality control inspections. The wine arrived, and I made a show of tasting it before nodding approval to the sommelier. As he poured, I watched Chloe's face carefully. Quality control? Making sure work meets our standards. It requires a keen eye for detail and the ability to spot problems before they become expensive mistakes. She nodded enthusiastically, though I could see her mind working behind her eyes, probably calculating how to turn this opportunity into something that didn't involve actual physical labor. When would I start? Next Monday. I'll have you shadow Frank Morrison. He's our best site supervisor. Been with the company for 12 years. And this would be instead of the office work? In addition to, you'd spend mornings on job sites, afternoons in the office handling your administrative duties. Her smile faltered slightly. That sounds like a lot. Marcus used to work similar hours when he was learning the business. He said it was the only way to really understand what made the company successful. There was again Marcus as the standard she was supposed to live up to. I could see the frustration flash across her face before she caught herself. Of course. I want to follow his example. The food arrived. Delicate preparations that probably took hours to create and cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. I watched Chloe photograph each dish before taking careful, Instagram-worthy bites. Tell me, I said after the wine had relaxed her slightly, what do you think Marcus would say about your progress so far? I think he'd be proud that I'm trying to build something meaningful. Even though you're struggling with the basics? The question came out sharper than I'd intended, but the wine was affecting me too. Chloe set down her fork and looked at me directly. Are you trying to tell me something, Victoria? I'm trying to understand whether you're genuinely interested in learning this business, or whether you're just going through the motions. What's that supposed to mean? It means that in 2 weeks, you've shown no real aptitude for the work, no curiosity about the industry, and no particular connection to the legacy Marcus was so passionate about. Her cheeks flushed, whether from wine or anger I couldn't tell. That's not fair. I'm doing my best. Are you? Because your best seems to involve taking extended lunch breaks, losing important documents, and treating the office like a social media backdrop. I've been grieving. Have you? I leaned forward, letting some of my own frustration show. Because from where I sit, it looks like you've been calculating, positioning yourself, playing a role. The restaurant suddenly felt very quiet around us. Chloe stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her deciding how to respond. I loved your son, she said finally.
Did you?
Or did you love what he could provide? How dare you? How dare I question a woman who married my son for his money, treated his death as a business opportunity, and can't even remember his dreams or passions or the things that made him laugh? The words hung in the air between us like a declaration of war. Chloe's composure cracked completely, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. You don't know anything about our marriage. I know you can't tell me a single specific thing you loved about Marcus as a person. I know you've spent more time researching the value of my art collection than learning about his renovation project. I know you married him after dating for 6 months and have spent the last month trying to figure out how to get your hands on money that was never his to give. That's not. It's exactly true. And we both know it. Chloe reached for her wine glass with a shaking hand and drained it in one gulp. When she set it down, her expression had hardened into something almost unrecognizable. So what happens now? You fire me? Kick me out? Send me back to my little apartment with my $50,000 and tell me to be grateful? I haven't decided yet. Well, let me help you decide. She leaned across the table, her voice dropping to a whisper. I'm not going anywhere, Victoria. I'm Marcus's widow, whether you like it or not. I have rights. And if you think you can just discard me because I'm not the perfect grieving daughter-in-law, you're going to be very disappointed. What rights do you think you have, exactly? The right to contest his will. The right to claim a portion of the marital estate. The right to make your life very complicated if you don't start treating me with the respect I deserve. There it was, the threat I'd been waiting for. The moment when Chloe dropped all pretense and revealed herself as the predator she'd always been. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. You need me to go away quietly? Then give me what I want. A reasonable settlement. Enough to start over properly. We can call it honoring Marcus's memory. I signaled for the check, my movements deliberate and calm. And what exactly would you consider reasonable? 2 million.
Cash.
And I disappear from your life forever. $2 million. For a 2-year marriage to a man she'd never bothered to know. That's quite a proposal. It's quite a bargain. Legal battles cost more than that, and they're so public. Think about what that kind of attention might do to your business reputation. She was threatening me. In public, over lunch that cost more than most people's monthly rent, this beautiful young woman was attempting to extort $2 million from me. I signed the check and stood up, my pearls catching the light from the crystal chandeliers. Thank you for lunch, Chloe. And for clarifying your positions so thoroughly. Does that mean you'll consider my proposal? Oh, I'll definitely consider it. But as we walked out of that exclusive restaurant together, I was considering something entirely different from what she imagined. Chloe had just declared war on the wrong woman. Have you ever had someone underestimate you because of your age or gender? Drop a comment below and share your story. I read every single one, and your experiences might inspire our next video. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss when we upload new stories of women who refuse to back down. The next morning, I arrived at the office an hour early and called an emergency meeting with Patricia, our head of legal affairs and our chief financial officer. I need to discuss a personnel matter. I began once we were all seated in my conference room. It concerns Chloe's position with the company. Is she not working out? Patricia asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. That's one way to put it. But the issue is more complex than job performance. She's made certain demands regarding her ongoing relationship with the company. I outlined Chloe's threat without revealing the specifics of her extortion attempt. Professional discretion was important, but I needed my team to understand the situation. So, she's essentially threatening legal action if we terminate her employment, asked Harrison, our legal counsel. Among other things, I want to understand our options. Well, given her performance issues, we have clear grounds for termination, Patricia said, consulting her meticulously kept files. I've documented every missed deadline, every client complaint, every procedural error. But, Harrison added carefully, terminating the widow of the founder's son could create public relations challenges, especially if she decides to make her grievances public. What if she resigned voluntarily? I asked. That would be ideal from a legal standpoint. But how would we encourage that without appearing to pressure her? I smiled. Leave that to me. That afternoon, I implemented what I privately called the accountability protocol. Instead of working with Patricia, Chloe would now report directly to me. Every task would be clearly defined, every deadline specifically noted, every interaction with clients closely monitored. I think this will be good for both of us, I told her as I explained her new reporting structure. You'll get more personalized guidance, and I'll have a better understanding of how to help you succeed. More personalized guidance meant that every mistake, every moment of confusion, every sign of her fundamental unsuitability for the work would be directly visible to me. That sounds wonderful, she said, though I could see the wariness in her eyes. Let's start with something straightforward. I need you to coordinate with 3 subcontractors for the Millfield project. Here are their contact numbers, the specifications they need to review, and the deadline for responses. I handed her a folder with detailed instructions. The task was well within the capabilities of any competent administrative assistant, but it required attention to detail, professional communication skills, and the ability to manage multiple priorities simultaneously. When do you need this completed? End of business today. She glanced at the clock. It was already 2 p.m. Today? Is that a problem? No, of course not. I just want to make sure I do it right. I'm confident you will. For the next 4 hours, I watched through my glass office walls as Chloe struggled with tasks that should have taken 2 hours maximum. She spent 20 minutes crafting a single email, had to ask Patricia 3 times how to access the company's vendor database, and at one point appeared to be Googling how to speak professionally to contractors. At 6 p.m., she knocked on my office door. I've contacted all 3 subcontractors, she announced, looking exhausted. Excellent. What were their responses? Well, I left messages for 2 of them, and I sent an email to the 3rd. Messages and emails. Did any of them respond? Not yet, but I'm sure they will tomorrow. I gestured for her to sit down. Chloe, the Millfield project breaks ground next Monday. These contractors need specifications today so they can prepare their teams and order materials. Leaving messages and sending emails isn't sufficient. But what else could I do? I called during business hours. You follow up. You call multiple times. You reach out to their emergency contacts. You make it clear that this is urgent and that delays will cost everyone money. She stared at me as if I'd suggested she solve world hunger. I didn't realize it was that urgent. Everything in construction is urgent. Delays cascade. One late delivery can push back an entire project, costing tens of thousands of dollars in overtime and penalties. I'll call them again first thing tomorrow. You'll call them now. And you'll keep calling until you reach a human being who can give you the information we need. But it's after 6. They might have gone home. Then you call their emergency numbers.
Or their cell phones.
Or you drive to their offices, if necessary. The color drained from her face. Drive to their offices? Chloe, this is what the job requires. Real deadlines, real consequences, real responsibility. If you're not prepared to handle that level of commitment, perhaps we should discuss other options. She looked trapped, which was exactly how I wanted her to feel. I'll make the calls, she said quietly. Good. I'll wait with you to make sure you reach everyone. For the next 2 hours, I watched Chloe struggle through increasingly difficult conversations with contractors who were, understandably, annoyed to be called after business hours by someone who clearly didn't understand the technical specifications she was asking about. By 8 p.m., she had managed to reach 2 of the 3 contractors and had completely bungled both conversations, providing incorrect measurements and failing to understand their questions about material grades and delivery schedules. I think we have a problem, I said as she hung up from the second disastrous call. What kind of problem? Both contractors are confused about the specifications. Johnson thinks we need Class A concrete when the plans call for Class B. Morrison is ordering steel reinforcement that's twice the gauge we actually need. but I told them exactly what was in the folder. You read from the folder without understanding what you were reading. There's a difference between transmitting information and communicating effectively. She slumped in her chair, looking genuinely defeated for the first time since I'd known her. I don't understand how Marcus made this look so easy. Marcus spent 2 years learning construction management before he was allowed to coordinate with subcontractors. And he had an engineering degree. An engineering degree? She looked surprised. From Caltech, didn't you know that? He told me he studied business. He double majored. Engineering and business. He wanted to understand both the technical and financial sides of construction. Another piece of Marcus's life that Chloe had never bothered to learn about. Her husband had been a brilliant, educated man with specific expertise, and she'd somehow reduced him in her mind to a generic, successful businessman. Look, I said, my voice gentler now. This isn't your fault. You don't have the background for this kind of work. But that raises the question of what role you're suited for. I want to learn. I can get better at this. Can you? Because what happened today isn't about inexperience. It's about fundamental aptitude. You don't think systematically. You don't prioritize effectively. You don't communicate with precision. Each criticism hit her like a physical blow. You're saying I'm stupid. I'm saying you're not suited for this industry. There's a difference. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe it's time to consider what you actually want from life. Not what you think you deserve because you married Marcus, but what you're genuinely interested in pursuing. And if I can't figure that out, then maybe our arrangement isn't working for either of us. I could see her wheels turning, weighing her options, trying to figure out how to salvage a situation that was rapidly deteriorating. Victoria, about what I said yesterday at lunch. Yes, I was upset.
Grieving.
I didn't mean to sound threatening. Didn't you? I'm scared. I don't know how to take care of myself without Marcus. I've never had to be completely independent. It was a skillful pivot from threatening extortion to playing the victim. But I'd heard too much of her private conversations to believe this performance. Independence is a skill like any other, Chloe. It can be learned. Could you teach me? I could. But it would require you to be completely honest with me about what you really want and what you're willing to work for. I want to honor Marcus's memory. I want to build something meaningful. No, you don't. You want financial security without having to earn it. You want the lifestyle Marcus provided without understanding the work that made it possible. She opened her mouth to protest, then seemed to think better of it. What if you're right? What if that's exactly what I want? Is that so terrible? Finally, a moment of honesty. It's not terrible, Chloe, but it's not something I can provide. And it's not something Marcus could have provided either, even if he'd lived. What do you mean? I mean that wealth without purpose is just expensive emptiness. Marcus understood that. It's why he worked so hard, why he cared so much about excellence. The money was never the point, it was what the money could build. She looked genuinely confused, as if I were speaking a foreign language. So, what happens now? Now you decide what you actually want from your life. And I decide whether I'm willing to help you get it. But as I watched her gather her things and leave the office, I already knew what she would decide. And I already knew what my response would be. The game was entering its final phase. Chloe didn't come to work the next day. Patricia called at 9 a.m. to report that she'd left a voicemail saying she was unwell and needed time to process everything. Should I mark it as a sick day or personal leave? Patricia asked. Let's call it what it is, a mental health day. She's trying to figure out her next move. I spent the morning handling the Millfield project coordination myself, cleaning up the confusion Chloe had created with the subcontractors and ensuring everything would proceed on schedule. It took me 45 minutes to accomplish what had taken her 2 days to bungle. At lunch, I drove home to find Chloe's car in the driveway and the pool area scattered with empty wine bottles and takeout containers. Clearly, her illness involved day drinking and self-pity. I found her in the guest wing living room, wearing designer athleisure and clutching a glass of what appeared to be my 2015 Dom Perignon, a bottle worth more than most people's monthly salary. "Victoria," she said when she saw me, not bothering to get up from the couch. "I wasn't expecting you home. I thought I should check on my sick employee. I'm feeling much better, actually. This champagne is very medicinal." I glanced around the room, taking in the evidence of her day. Empty shopping bags from luxury retailers, her laptop open to real estate websites, and what appeared to be legal documents scattered across the coffee table. Doing some research? Just exploring my options. I moved closer to get a better look at the papers. Legal forms for contesting wills, printouts about spousal inheritance rights, contact information for several high-profile attorneys. These are interesting options. She finally looked up at me, and I could see the wine had loosened her tongue and sharpened her resentment. "Do you know what I realized today, Victoria?" "What's that?" "I realized that you've been playing with me, like a cat with a mouse. Making me jump through hoops, watching me fail, all so you could feel superior." "That's an interesting theory." "It's not a theory. It's the truth. You never intended to help me succeed at the company. You just wanted to humiliate me." She stood up, swaying slightly, and I could see the anger that had been building beneath her careful composure. "You think I'm some stupid gold digger who doesn't deserve your precious son. Well, maybe you're right. Maybe I did marry him for his money. But you know what? He was happy to provide it. He liked having a beautiful wife who made him feel successful and important. And what did you provide in return?" "I provided what he wanted. Companionship.
Beauty.
Status. The kind of wife other men envied. Not love." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Love is a luxury for people who don't have to worry about survival. I survived by being what men wanted me to be. Marcus wanted a trophy wife, so that's what I gave him. And now I want what I was promised. Security. Comfort. The life I earned by being the perfect wife for 2 years. Even though you never loved him? Even though I never pretended to be something I'm not, once he was dead and couldn't be hurt by the truth." It was the most honest thing she'd said since I'd known her. And it revealed exactly what I'd suspected. Chloe was a transactional person who viewed relationships as business arrangements. "So, what do these legal documents tell you about your options?" "They tell me that I have more rights than you want me to believe. Community property laws, spousal inheritance statutes, claims against estate mismanagement." She gestured at the papers with her champagne flute. "Turns out there are several ways a widow can challenge the distribution of her husband's assets. Even when those assets were never legally his? Even when his family tries to hide assets that should have been transferred to him before his death." I felt a chill of recognition. She'd been talking to lawyers who understood exactly how to frame the situation to her advantage. "What kind of challenge are you considering?" "The kind that asks why a successful businessman never transferred family assets into his own name. The kind that suggests maybe there was undue influence or financial elder abuse preventing him from claiming what was rightfully his." Financial elder abuse. She was threatening to claim that I had manipulated my own son to keep assets that belonged to him. That's a very serious accusation. It's a very serious situation. Marcus was 35 years old, running a construction company, married with plans for a family. What kind of mother keeps her adult son's inheritance in her own name? The kind who built the company herself and understood that family wealth requires careful management. Or the kind who is too controlling to let her son become truly independent. The threat was clear now. If I didn't give her what she wanted, She would drag my family through a public legal battle, questioning my relationship with Marcus and painting me as a manipulative matriarch who had prevented my son from claiming his rightful inheritance. And if you filed such a challenge, what would you hope to achieve? A fair settlement. Recognition that I was part of Marcus's life and deserving of security. How much security? I think we discussed that yesterday. $2 million would be reasonable. $2 million to make her go away quietly, or face a lawsuit that would cost more than that in legal fees and could potentially tie up my assets for years. That's quite a sophisticated strategy for someone who couldn't manage basic office tasks. Her smile was sharp and completely without warmth. I may not be good at construction management, Victoria, but I'm very good at understanding leverage. I set my purse down and walked to the window, looking out at the garden Marcus had helped me design when he was in high school. You know, Chloe, you're absolutely right about one thing. What's that? I have been playing with you, but not the way you think. What do you mean? I turned back to face her, and for the first time in weeks, I let my real feelings show. I mean that I've been watching you reveal exactly who you are. Every conversation, every decision, every moment of selfishness and greed, you've been showing me the woman who married my son for his money and now wants to profit from his death. And now I know exactly how to respond. Something in my tone must have warned her, because her defiant expression faltered slightly. What are you going to do? I'm going to give you exactly what you deserve. The $2 million? Oh, Chloe, you still don't understand, do you? I moved closer, and she actually stepped backward. You think this is about money. But it was never about money. It was about justice. Justice for what? For Marcus. For the man you never bothered to know or love or honor. For the son who deserved better than a woman who sees his death as a business opportunity. Her face went pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. Victoria, I think you're misunderstanding. I'm understanding perfectly. You want to threaten me? File your lawsuit. Claim financial elder abuse. Drag my family's name through the courts. I don't want to do that. Yes, you do. It's exactly what you want to do. So do it. What? File your challenge. Make your accusations. Let's see how well your legal strategy works when the court discovers that you never even knew your husband had an engineering degree. She stared at me, clearly not understanding where I was going with this. Let's see how sympathetic a judge is to a widow who can't name a single one of her husband's genuine interests or dreams. Who never visited his office, never met his colleagues, never showed any interest in the work that defined his life. That doesn't prove anything. It proves everything. Because I have something you don't know about, Chloe.
What?
I have Marcus's journals. The color drained completely from her face. 3 years' worth of entries where he wrote about his marriage, his hopes, his growing concerns about your relationship. Very detailed entries about your spending habits, your lack of interest in his work, your tendency to disappear whenever he wanted to discuss serious topics about your future together. You're bluffing. Am I? Would you like me to read you the entry from your 6-month anniversary, where he wrote about how you seemed more interested in photographing the expensive restaurant than having a conversation? Or the one from last Christmas, where he wondered if you'd ever asked him a question about anything that didn't involve money? She sank back onto the couch, the fight going out of her. He loved me. He tried to love you. But it's very hard to love someone who won't let you know them, and who clearly has no interest in knowing you in return. What do you want from me? I want you to leave.
Today.
Quietly. With the $50,000 Marcus left you, and whatever dignity you can still salvage. And if I don't, then we'll have that legal battle you're threatening. And I'll make sure every humiliating detail of your marriage, every moment of selfishness, every conversation you've had plotting to get your hands on my money, every lie you've told, becomes part of the public record. You've been recording me? I've been documenting everything, Chloe. Everything. She stared at me in shock, finally understanding that she'd been outmaneuvered from the very beginning. You're a monster.
No.
I'm a mother who loved her son and refused to let his death be turned into a payday for someone who never deserved him. This isn't over. Yes, it is. And as I watched her gather her legal documents with shaking hands, I knew that it really was over. The trap had closed exactly as I'd planned. Chloe didn't leave that day or the next. Instead, she retreated to the guest wing like a wounded animal, emerging only to raid my kitchen and make hush phone calls to what I assumed were lawyers and advisors. I let her stay. There was something poetic about allowing her to choose the timing of her final defeat. On Friday evening, a week after our confrontation, she knocked on my study door. Victoria? Could we talk? She looked terrible, her perfect hair unwashed, her designer clothes wrinkled, her makeup smudged as if she'd been crying. The confident predator had been replaced by something desperate and cornered. Of course. Come in. She settled into the chair across from my desk, the same chair where she'd made her threatening demands just days earlier.
I've been thinking about what you said.
About leaving quietly. And I want to propose a compromise. I set down my pen and gave her my full attention. What kind of compromise? I know you think I'm terrible. Maybe you're right. But I'm also young and scared, and I made mistakes because I didn't know how else to survive. It was a carefully rehearsed speech, probably crafted with the help of whatever advisors she'd been consulting. Go on. I don't want to fight you in court. I don't want to drag Marcus's memory through a public battle. But I also can't walk away with nothing. You're not walking away with nothing. You have $50,000 and whatever personal items Marcus left you. $50,000 won't last 6 months. And then what? I've never had a career. I don't have skills or connections or family to fall back on. Then perhaps it's time to develop some. Or perhaps we could find a middle ground that benefits both of us. I leaned back in my chair, curious to hear what scheme she developed during her week of hiding. What do you have in mind? $500,000. Enough for me to buy a small place, maybe go back to school, start over properly. In exchange, I sign whatever legal documents you want, giving up any future claims to Marcus's estate. It was a significant reduction from her original demand of $2 million, but still an enormous sum for a woman who'd contributed nothing to my family's wealth. And if I refuse? Then I file the lawsuit. But Victoria, I don't want to do that. I know it would hurt Marcus's memory, and despite what you think, I did care about him. Cared about him how? He was kind to me, generous. He made me feel safe for the first time in my life. Safe from what? For the first time since I'd known her, Chloe's composed facade cracked completely. Her voice broke as she answered. From being poor. From being nobody. From having to depend on men who might discard me whenever someone younger or prettier came along. It was, I realized, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her. Not love, not grief, but raw fear about her own survival. So, you married Marcus for security. I married him because he offered me a life where I wouldn't have to be afraid anymore. And yes, that was selfish. But it wasn't cruel. I tried to be a good wife. By never learning anything about who he really was. By being what he wanted me to be. Beautiful, supportive, grateful. Isn't that what most men want from wives? Most men want partners, Chloe. People who share their lives, not just their beds and bank accounts. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara. Maybe you're right. Maybe I was never capable of being what Marcus needed. But that doesn't mean I'm evil. No, I agreed. It just means you're the wrong person to benefit from his death. So, you won't consider the compromise? I studied her face, still beautiful despite the tears and smudged makeup, still young enough to rebuild her life if she chose to do the work. Tell me something, Chloe. If I gave you $500,000, what would you do with it? I told you. Buy a place, go back to school? No, really. What would you actually do? She was quiet for a long moment, apparently recognizing that this was a test of some kind. I'd probably buy a condo somewhere warm. Maybe take some time to figure out what I want to do with my life. And how long would $500,000 last if you're buying luxury condos and taking time to figure things out? I don't know. It would last about 3 years, assuming you maintained your current spending habits. And then you'd be right back where you started, except older and with fewer options. So you're saying no? I'm saying that giving you money won't solve your fundamental problem, which is, you don't know how to create value. You only know how to extract it from other people. The words hit her like a physical blow. She sat back in her chair, staring at me with something that might have been recognition. So, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe it's time you learned. Learned what? How to build something yourself. How to contribute to the world instead of just taking from it. And you'd teach me?
No, Chloe.
I'd give you one final opportunity to prove you're capable of learning. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a document I'd prepared earlier in the week. This is a contract. It offers you a 1-year position as a project coordinator for our affordable housing initiative, the Hartley Mansion renovation that Marcus was planning. Her eyes widened. You want me to manage Marcus's project? I want you to learn what Marcus cared about. Real construction work, creating something meaningful, serving people who need help rather than profiting from their misfortune. What does it pay? $40,000 a year. Enough to live modestly while you learn skills that might actually serve you in the long term. 40,000? She looked horrified. I can't live on $40,000. You can't live on $40,000 the way you've been living. But you could live on it if you learn to budget, cook for yourself, shop responsibly, and find satisfaction in accomplishment rather than just consumption. And if I refuse? Then you leave today with Marcus's $50,000 inheritance and whatever legal battle you think you can win. She stared at the contract as if it were a snake. This is cruel. This is an opportunity. The only real opportunity you're going to get. To be poor and work construction? To learn who you are when you're not depending on other people's money. She was quiet for a long time, reading through the contract terms, probably calculating whether a year of $40,000 salary was better than a risky lawsuit. If I did this, if I completed the year successfully, then what? Then you'd have job skills, work experience, and the self-respect that comes from building something with your own hands. And financially, you have whatever you'd earned and saved, plus the satisfaction of knowing you'd honored Marcus's memory by completing his project. No bonus? No severance package. No safety net beyond what you create for yourself. She looked up at me, and I could see her struggling with the concept of earning rather than being given. Why are you offering this? Because despite everything, I believe people can change if they want it badly enough. And if I can't do the work? Then you'll be fired, just like any other employee who can't meet basic job requirements. This is really what you want. For me to spend a year learning construction management for $40,000. I want you to spend a year learning what it means to contribute something valuable to the world. She set the contract down and looked directly at me. And you really think this will make me a better person? I think it will show you whether you're capable of being one. And if I sign this, you'll stop threatening to expose Marcus's journals? I'll keep his private thoughts private, yes. And you won't contest my right to be here during the project? You'll live in the guest wing and eat meals with me just as you have been. But Chloe, yes. If you take this offer, you work for it. No special treatment, no shortcuts, no falling back on manipulation or charm when things get difficult. You succeed or fail on your own merit. She picked up the pen I'd placed beside the contract, her hand trembling slightly. 1 year. 1 year. And after that? After that, you'll know what you're truly capable of. She signed her name with a flourish that reminded me she'd once been someone who believed in fairy tale endings. When do I start? Monday morning, 7 a.m. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty. As she left my study, contract in hand, I felt something I hadn't expected, a small measure of hope. Not that Chloe would transform into someone worthy of Marcus's memory, but that she might at least discover whether there was anything real beneath all that beautiful ambition. Of course, I already knew she wouldn't last a month, but watching her try would be education enough. Chloe lasted exactly 4 weeks. I could have predicted it to the day. The first week, she showed up consistently, but spent most of her time taking photos of the Hartley Mansion's architectural details for her social media accounts. The second week, she began arriving late and leaving early, claiming the dust and noise were affecting her health. The third week, she managed to lose the blueprints for the entire electrical system renovation. The fourth week, she simply stopped showing up altogether. Mrs. Bartlett? Frank Morrison, the site supervisor, called me on a Tuesday morning. We got a problem with your project coordinator. What kind of problem?
She's not cut out for this work.
Yesterday, she asked one of my guys to carry her purse because it was too heavy. Today she wanted to know if we could install a coffee station in the mansion because the nearest Starbucks is too far away. I see. Look, I respect that you're trying to give family a chance, but she's becoming a safety hazard. She won't wear proper boots. She keeps walking into active work zones because she's on her phone, and she told the electrical contractor that his plans were aesthetically unappealing. Fire her.
Mom.
You have my permission to terminate her employment. Document the safety violations and send her home. Are you sure? I know she's your daughter-in-law. She's an employee who can't meet basic job requirements. Treat her like any other employee who's failed their probationary period. Yes, ma'am. That evening, Chloe stormed into my study without knocking. They fired me. Your foreman actually fired me. I heard. How can you just sit there? I'm family. You can't let some construction worker fire your son's widow. I looked up from the quarterly reports I was reviewing. Actually, I can. I told Frank to fire you. You told him to fire me? You weren't doing the job, Chloe. You were treating a construction site like a photo shoot location. I was learning. You said I needed time to adjust. I said you needed to work for what you wanted. Instead, you spent 3 weeks proving that you're exactly what I thought you were, someone who believes the world should accommodate your comfort instead of expecting you to meet its demands. She stood in my doorway, her designer work clothes, which had never actually been exposed to any real work, pristine as always, her perfectly styled hair untouched by the dust and sweat that covered everyone else on the job site. So what happens now? Now you leave. Just like that? Just like that. What about the contract? I thought I had a year. The contract included performance standards. You failed to meet them. This is impossible. You set me up to fail.
No, Chloe.
I gave you exactly what you asked for, an opportunity to prove yourself. You chose to fail. She began pacing the room, her composure finally cracking completely. You never intended to let me succeed. This whole thing was just elaborate revenge for Marcus. Revenge for what? For marrying him. For not being the perfect daughter-in-law you wanted.
No, Chloe.
This was justice for the fact that you married a good man for his money and are now trying to profit from his death. I loved him. You loved what he could provide. There's a difference. You don't know anything about our marriage. I know enough. I know you can't tell me what made him laugh. I know you never learned about his dreams or his passions or his plans for the future. I know you married him after 6 months of dating and spent those 6 months researching his net worth instead of getting to know his character. How could you possibly know that? Because I hired a private investigator, Chloe. The day after Marcus introduced you to me, I had you investigated. The words hit her like a physical blow. She stopped pacing and stared at me in shock. You investigated me? I had you investigated before Marcus proposed. When someone begins dating my son and immediately starts researching family assets online, I pay attention. When that same person has a history of strategic relationships with wealthy men, I take precautions. You knew? This whole time you knew? I've known exactly who you are since before you became part of this family. Then why? Why did you let me stay here? Why did you put me through all of this? Because I hoped that despite your calculating approach to relationships, you might have developed genuine feelings for my son. I wanted to give you opportunities to prove that your feelings had evolved beyond self-interest. And now I know that you're exactly what I thought you were. A beautiful, selfish woman who sees other people as opportunities rather than human beings. She sank into the chair across from my desk, all the fight gone out of her. So what happens now? Now you pack your things and leave my house. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem to solve. Victoria, please. I know you hate me, but I have nowhere else to go. No family, no real friends, no job. You have $50,000 and whatever you can make of your life going forward. $50,000 won't last forever. Then you'd better learn how to earn more.
How?
I don't have skills or experience or connections. Then get some. Go to school. Learn a trade. Start at the bottom somewhere and work your way up. Do what millions of other people do every day. I'm 28 years old. I can't start over with nothing. You're 28 years old with a college degree, no dependents, and enough money to support yourself for a year while you figure out what you want to do with your life. Most people would consider that incredibly fortunate. Most people didn't marry Marcus. No, they didn't. And Marcus deserved better than someone who saw him as a retirement plan. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, all her artificial composure finally stripped away. I did care about him. Maybe you did in your way. But caring isn't the same as loving, and loving isn't the same as understanding. What if I tried harder? What if I went back to school, learned about construction, really tried to honor his memory? Then you'd be doing it for the right reasons, but you'd be doing it on your own. You won't help me? I won't enable you. There's a difference. She sat in silence for several minutes, occasionally wiping her eyes with tissues from the box I kept on my desk. You really think I'm a terrible person? I think you're a person who's never been required to develop character because your beauty has always been enough to get what you wanted. And you think it's too late for me to change? I think change requires acknowledging what needs to be changed. And I think you're more interested in finding someone to rescue you than in rescuing yourself. She nodded slowly, as if accepting a difficult truth. When do I have to leave? Tomorrow. Tomorrow? You've had 3 weeks to prepare for this possibility. I think that's sufficient notice. Can I take some of Marcus's things? Personal items that remind me of him. What would you want? Maybe some photos? The watch I gave him for our anniversary. The photos are copies of pictures that were already in this house. The watch you gave him cost $12,000 and was charged to his credit card. Her cheeks flushed red. I was trying to get him something nice. You were spending his money to buy him a gift that made you look generous.
Fine.
Can I take the copy of the photos? You can take whatever Marcus specifically left to you in his will. Personal clothing, a few books, his college ring. That's all. That's all that was actually his to give. She stood up slowly, moving like someone much older than 28. I suppose you think you've won. This was never about winning, Chloe. Then what was it about? It was about justice. For Marcus, for the family legacy he cared about, and for the principle that actions have consequences. And my consequences are poverty and loneliness? Your consequences are the opportunity to discover who you are when you can't depend on other people to solve your problems. That's a cruel gift. It's the only gift that might actually help you. She walked toward the door, then turned back. Victoria? Yes, I really did try to love him. I believe you tried to love what he could give you. Maybe that's the same thing. No, Chloe. That's the problem. The next morning, I watched from my bedroom window as Chloe loaded her belongings into her car. Everything fit easily: designer clothes, expensive shoes, jewelry, and a few items that had actually belonged to Marcus. She didn't look back at the house as she drove away. I stood at that window for a long time after her car disappeared, thinking about my son and the woman he'd chosen and the choices that had led us all to this moment. The house felt different without her presence, not empty, but clean, like a wound that had finally been properly treated. That afternoon, I called Frank Morrison. Mrs. Bartlett? Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Frank. I wanted to discuss the Hartley Mansion project. Are you bringing in a new coordinator?
Yes, me.
Ma'am, I'm going to oversee the project personally. It was my son's dream, and I think it's time I saw it through myself. That's wonderful news. When would you like to start? Monday morning, 7 a.m. I'll have hard hats and safety equipment ready for you. Perfect. That evening, I sat in Marcus's study, surrounded by his renovation plans and architectural drawings. For the first time since his death, I felt close to him again, not through grief or anger or the need to protect his memory, but through the simple act of caring about something he'd cared about. Outside, the Pacific stretched endlessly toward the horizon, and somewhere in the city below, Chloe was beginning whatever came next in her life. I hoped she would surprise me. I hoped she would find a way to become someone worth being. But whether she did or didn't, my son's legacy was safe. The Hartley Mansion would be restored. Working families would have affordable homes in a neighborhood that had been abandoned. And I would know that I had honored the memory of a man who believed in building something meaningful with your life, not just extracting value from other people's work. The house was quiet now, but it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. 6 months later, I was reviewing the final blueprints for the Hartley Mansion when Patricia knocked on my office door. Mrs. Bartlett? There's someone here to see you. I'm not expecting anyone. She says she's your former daughter-in-law. I looked up from the architectural drawings, surprised. Send her in. Chloe appeared in my doorway, but she looked like a different person. Her hair was shorter and simply styled. She wore jeans and a plain blouse instead of designer clothes, and her hands looked like they'd been doing actual work. Hello, Victoria. Chloe, this is unexpected. I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I was in the neighborhood and thought, well, I wanted you to see something. What's that? She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of herself wearing a hard hat and safety vest, standing in front of a partially constructed building. I'm a project assistant at Riverside Construction. It's a small company that builds affordable housing. I've been there for 4 months. Congratulations. It's not glamorous work. The pay is terrible, and I come home exhausted every day. But I'm learning. Learning what? How to read blueprints. How to coordinate with subcontractors. How to solve problems instead of expecting other people to solve them for me. She put her phone away and looked directly at me. I wanted to thank you. For what? For not giving me what I wanted. I'm not sure I understand. If you'd given me the $2 million, I would have spent it in 3 years and been right back where I started. If you'd let me keep the job at your company, I would have failed eventually and learned nothing. And now I know what it feels like to earn something.
To be good at something.
To contribute instead of just taking. How are you managing financially? I have a studio apartment and a 10-year-old car. I cook my own meals and shop at thrift stores. And you know what? I'm happier than I've ever been. Because you're independent? Because I'm useful. The families who move into the houses we build, they send thank you cards sometimes. Pictures of their kids in their new bedrooms. I helped build those bedrooms. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance. But what I saw was something I'd never seen in her before. Genuine satisfaction. What about Marcus? What about him? Do you think about him differently now? She was quiet for a moment, considering the question. I think I understand now what I never gave him. Not just love, but partnership. Someone who cared about his dreams because they were his dreams, not because of what they might mean for me. Do you regret the marriage? I regret that I wasn't capable of being the wife he deserved. But I don't regret that knowing him, even imperfectly, eventually taught me how to be someone worth being. That's a mature perspective. I'm learning maturity too. Turns out it's easier to develop when you're not constantly looking for someone else to solve your problems. We talked for another 20 minutes about her work, her plans, her slowly developing sense of purpose. When she finally stood to leave, she paused at my office door. Victoria? Yes. The Hartley Mansion project? I saw the article about it in the paper. About how it's going to provide affordable housing for 30 families. It should be completed next month. Marcus would be proud. Yes, he would. I'm proud too. Of you for finishing it, and of myself for finally understanding why it mattered to him. After she left, I sat in my office thinking about second chances and the long, difficult process of becoming the person you're supposed to be.
Chloe had surprised me.
Not by transforming into someone perfect, but by discovering that she was capable of growth when growth was the only option. I turned back to the Hartley Mansion blueprints, imagining the families who would live there, the children who would grow up in houses that my son had dreamed of building. Some stories end with victory, others with defeat. But the best stories end with understanding of ourselves, of what we're capable of, and of what really matters. In the end, Marcus had left behind exactly what he'd intended, a legacy of work worth doing and people worth caring about. And sometimes that's enough. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Stories like these remind us that it's never too late to choose who we want to be, and that real strength comes from building something meaningful, not just taking from others. If this story touched you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, your best chapters might still be ahead of you. Until next time, keep writing your own true story.